Steve Robbins here. Welcome to the Get It Done Guys quick and dirty tips to work less and do more. How to study is one of the most important things a student can learn. It's September in my hometown of Boston, and students are arriving in force everywhere. Moving trucks are lining the streets, futons are filling the houses, and Axe body spray is flying off the shelves. Everyone is here for one thing, to learn what the schools are teaching. They learn by studying. Yet, oddly, the one thing the schools aren't teaching is how to study. We assume people will magically pick it up without trying. No. Learning how to study is simple, but it's not easy. You can increase your chances of doing well in school, however, by mastering several particular study skills. I was the weird, geeky kid in school years before geeky was in, so everyone hated me and I had no friends. But because I lacked a social life, I did have an awful lot of time to figure out how to study. That's why I eventually graduated from both MIT and Harvard Business School. Here are some of my top study tips, and I hope they work as well for you, and I hope you have friends too. Tip number 1, how to study: skim the big picture, then dive deep. When you're reading something you've never read before, the key study skills are memorizing it and organizing it in your brain so that you can use the information at a later date. First, build a framework for the big picture. Don't try to read the material in depth the first time through. Instead, skim it quickly. Get a broad idea of what it's about and gloss over the details that you don't understand. This will give you the big picture. It's a sort of executive summary. The big picture of the American Revolution might be: King George's abuses of the colonies led to a Declaration of Independence. France finances the revolution and fights England in Europe, so England doesn't do quite enough to keep the colonies. Eventually, America is born, and several years later, the Founding Fathers write the Constitution we still have today. Now, read the material again, but this time, focus on the details and fit them into the story that you created in your mind. You'll include the details like Thomas Jefferson's writing of the Declaration, why the Articles of Confederation failed, Benjamin Franklin's trips to France to build support, and why the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution. Tip number 2 is how to study by taking notes. Take notes by hand. When you write by hand, you involve multiple brain systems: physical movement, visual input, and auditory input. You'll also find yourself memorizing the mental image of your notes as well as the book, the lecture, or the video where the information came from. With a computer, you only engage your visual system and the up and down movements of your fingers. Plus, computers are distracting. If you insist on using a computer, and if you're under 30, you probably will insist, even if it's bad for you, at least try it both ways. Take notes on paper for a month and then on computer for a month, and stick with the system that you find works better for you for learning. And that should be how you measure success. Not just by how fast it is to type or write, but which one helps you learn better. You can also take notes using mind maps, which help your brain make new associations. You can find the details in the Get It Done Guy episode on how to take killer notes. There's a link in this episode's transcript. Tip number 3, how to study using physical books. There is also evidence that you learn better from physical books than from ebooks. Your brain uses subliminal cues to help make the material distinct and easier to recall in your mind. Things like how the light hits the page, where things are on the page, how you're holding the book, what the cover looks like, and so on. Use physical books. Tip number 4, call out difficult material. If you've spent a lot of time on a concept and just can't quite get it, write it down in your notes and put a big star next to it. Go on to study other concepts. A few hours later, ideally after you've done something relaxing and totally unrelated, come back and dive into the starred concept again. Your brain uses sleep, daydreaming, and distraction time to consolidate information. The second or third time that you visit something new, you'll be much more likely to understand it. Tip number 5, study with irregular reviews. Reading material once isn't enough to learn it. Review your notes the day after you take them, and review by trying to recall what you've learned. When you can't recall something, look at your notes or the textbook to remind yourself. This part is important. If you want to know how to study, memorization is only half the skill. Recalling what you've memorized is the other half. Review the material a couple of hours after you learn it, a day later, a week later, and then a month later. Each review will take less time than the one before, and reviewing at increasing intervals actually works better than daily reviews. Memory gets reinforced most if you review right as you're on the edge of forgetting. Tip number 6, study with a group. The point of school is to learn stuff yourself. That means no cheating. If you copy from someone else, you may get the grades, but you won't actually learn. They'll learn the material, you'll just learn to copy. In today's world, you need the actual skills if you want to get ahead in your career. And that is why a study group can be super helpful for learning new material. For each class that you're taking, schedule study time each week. Invite your friends, Caitlin, Dawn, Trevor, Victor, Krista, Carlos, Luis, Helen, Timmy, and Lucretia. Get your friends together to study. You each bring your own books and your own laptops and your own study materials, and you work on your own work. But use each other as a resource. If you don't understand something, explain it to each other or explore it together as a group. Talk it through. Groups have power. Scheduling these meetings guarantees that you will take the time to work on that subject. You'll also learn other ways to think about the material. Plus, you all have different strengths. You may each suck at something, but at least you'll suck different. And conversely, you'll be good at different things. Together, you'll cover more than you would alone. Tip number 7, get enough sleep. Finally, sleep. Yes, sleep. When you dream, your brain consolidates new information, transfers it to long-term storage, and begins to connect it to everything else you know. You'll wake up understanding the material even better. If you stay up until 3 a.m. playing beer pong and then try to get up at 8 a.m. for class, well, you're making choices. Make different choices. You will be happier. It's been a few minutes, so let's review. We're talking about how to study. Get the big picture by skimming, then read in detail to fill in the little picture. Take notes by hand, star and review difficult material, review at irregular intervals, study with a group, and get enough sleep. That's a lot to remember, so make sure you take notes. Then review them tomorrow and at the end of the week. You only have to learn how to study once, and you'll be able to master a lifetime of learning. This is Steve Robbins. If you like this episode, please tell all your friends to subscribe to the Get It Done Guy podcast to help us make the podcast possible. You can find this episode's transcript with links to my note-taking episode, as well as links to the iTunes podcast itself at getitdone.quickanddirtytips.com. Work less, do more, and have a great life.